All right. So, good morning, everybody. We've got Steve from Cape Fear Productions here today. Dude has an impressive history of creating different things all across the spectrum. He actually produces the podcast that Ben and I do. So, that's how I connected with Steve. And I wanted to give him the opportunity to tell you guys a little bit more about what he does and the event that you might find. A good use for his services and helping expand your own personal brand and your business, etc. So, with no further ado, Steve, the floor is yours. Tell us all about yourself.
Well, thank you so much. And Brandon, I think you're on the right path there with your Yeti mic. It sounds very rich and good, and that's part of my
Thank
uh,
you.
quote unquote expertise, or should be. And again, I have a great pleasure working with Doug and Ben Hawkins on their local show. I have a history of doing shows sort of broadly across the United States. I did a sports show in Washington for 19 years. It was on Comcast and the local WJLA affiliate. And radio, I have as a role as a producer. Probably my biggest, well, definitely my biggest show is the Dr. Berg show every Friday 11. I'm on the air with him as his sidekick. And he, speaking as we all sort of look, okay, how can we get our reach and so on social media? He earns between 450 and $500,000 a month on YouTube views alone. That's not just for my show by any means. He also has thousands of videos and does 70 or $80 million in product sales a year. So he's one of those enigmas in the business. But at some level, it can be done. And maybe to just kind of give you a sense of in this new world of mine, where it's almost entirely, I don't do broadcast anymore because no one needs to pay for it. Everyone's on YouTube or X or Facebook or Rumble, etc., Instagram, TikTok. Um, I set up the show for him. I cut it live as I do with Ben and Doug, although we're pre-record theirs and then launch it later. I act as his co-host on that. I stream it out for Dr. Berg, in his case, to YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble simultaneously. Live is a little hazardous until you get used to it. Actually, Doug and Ben would do great. I mean, there is what's really called live to tape, meaning I don't edit it. They just go, and it might as well be live because they hit all the numbers and don't require, hey fellas, let's stop and take that again. So they're real pros in that regard. But the live element allows for audience participation, and we get people from all over the world. The commonality here is good health. In this case, for this particular client, Dr. Berg, and intermittent fast. He's the king of intermittent fasting and keto and those sort of things around the globe.
Wow.
And so it's a turnkey effort on my part. He's a very dry guy on camera, and he needs a little help sort of running the show. But he's very popular. And of course, you're not pigeonholed into health and wellness, real estate, or just any kind of firm that you're running can leverage this kind of communication. And to be frank, not everyone needs me. I mean, everyone has a Yeti now. They can afford one. Best Buy come out with all the stuff you need. But I do help coordinate it and stream it out. And also, I build a lot of what I call micro studios. I'll go into a client's. I'm going up to Liberty University next week to build out one. And it looks great. It's lit perfectly. It sounds great. And generally, Brandon, do I have your name right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I use a flat screen behind them, so 75-inch or bigger, and then just load in a JPEG and you can change it, and it's perfect. Your
Right.
key looks great, by the way. Your green screen is terrific. They've really come a long way in that regard.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
but that's the way I do it. And then lighting is critical. By the way, I'll give you a little free tip. So, Brandon, if you're going to wear a hat, cut a piece of white paper the shape of the underbill, and it will reflect light down on your face, and you won't have that dark area. It'll
How
actually
about
light your
that?
face better. Just tape it up there,
Okay. Thank you.
and
Steve.
other tricks. So I set that up, and then if they want to continue to work with me, they don't always need to. Like some of these people, people on the Hill or other people will do what they call hits with the network. So they'll say, okay, we got Dean Cain, former Superman, is with us today, and he will present his visage as I have set it up in his studio. So he looks great, broadcast quality. Luckily, the internet has matured enough so that all of you can. The Zoom meeting is a great example of that. Have consistent bandwidth to be able to deliver a good image without it falling apart as it did not too many years ago. It looks great. So the Kodak, as they call it, the software that allows our little computers or iPhones or whatever or Samsungs to regurgitate the signal efficiently has gotten enormously more efficient. And then the bandwidth after that has also just gotten more secure. So everyone can broadcast, from whatever device they have. And once again, this meeting is an example of that. So I did, I an achievement I had where I used to use this sort of broadcast and very sophisticated stuff was I did 280 shows for Laura Trump out of Trump Tower. I built a 3-camera studio in Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, and did some good shows out of it. And that's where I met so many clients that I then served after the fact. And we recorded that to tape, and then we edited afterwards. But now my model has changed. I want to do more stuff locally. I live in Wilmington, been here for 20 years. I'm not retired, and I never will. I want to keep cranking and doing something until God calls me home and all that. But the model's different. I don't need to. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be elaborate. And frankly, again, Steven Spielberg could go into Best Buy and come out with everything he needs to do a beautiful feature film. So it's just not the old exotic need for tons of dough to do it. So I can build out a studio cheap or improve one, and then take your feed from my home studio, and as I do with Doug and Ben, and produce a nice show in a local affordable rate rather than racing around the country and the costs that are incurred with that and the big fees. So I don't do that anymore, and I enjoy this. Also, not that we should all be focused on price in particular, but it's a lot easier to carry on with your show if you don't have to have this huge demonstration of return on investment by by what used to be very expensive kind of production costs, which is great. So one gig or one house sold or one closing can more than cover the cost of these shows. If you're selling bubble gum, it may take longer to return that. But in the industry you guys are at, it's not so important. But Brandon, in your case, so I don't want to do my own show, but I want to look great. That's where I can come in to kind of tweak and help, your image look the best it can, et cetera. And again, I'm just evolving myself. So to summarize, been in the broadcast industry for a long time, been on, had my shows on Comcast and local affiliates and everywhere else. Then I had them with sort of top tier clients on the internet, which is the new TV. And then now again, I want to serve the local community. I want to do most of my work right here in Wilmington, and do it in a way that's repeatable enough where it makes sense and it's worth it for me to do a number of smaller or less complex shows. They still look broadcast quality, but it just have fewer moving parts that allows me to work more efficiently and pass those savings on to local clients without sacrificing any quality. I will say, if I take on a job, the quality isn't dependent on the fee. If I'm going to do something, I want it to look brilliant. I've got my name on it, and there's no reason why, with today's technology, it can't look broadcast quality. With local gear or just improvement. Sometimes it's moving a light or putting a white piece of paper under the bill of a hat, or an up reflector to fill stuff, etc. Really sort of rubber bands and paper clips that can fix it. And that comes with a lot of experience. I've worked with, this kind of stuff for many, many years, decades. And I kind of know where the bodies are buried and how to bring forth a good looking production for my clients. And I think that really kind of summarizes, my background and what my desire is moving forward in the beautiful North Kakalaka area. So Raleigh is still what I consider a local territory or whatever. Southern California, that's a bit of a hike. So that's it. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Doug, for giving me the time to talk with your great team.
Yeah, of course. And just those little tips are very helpful. And, that's what a trained eye can show us. One thing, just to give you an example, another tip that Steve gave me was so I push our podcast, I put it on YouTube and also put it on Apple Podcasts. And he said, it's actually better, I guess, for the algorithm. Steve, you can probably explain it better than me, not to post the video on YouTube right away, but to actually premiere it like 2 days after you post it. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Also, do I need to do the same thing with the podcast on the Apple Podcasts?
Probably not the Apple podcast, although I don't know. I'm speaking in ignorance there. I couldn't tell you. But the deal is with the billions, literally, of people on YouTube trying to make a mark, either for their advocacy or business or just to show grandma the dog getting washed. YouTube doesn't know who you are. They rightly don't trust most people for some of the following reasons. A, they're not going to be consistent. They say, I've got a new show and I'm going to post it. Well, YouTube doesn't know that. And they don't want to put a lot of resources behind it to show it to an audience. Also, maybe you're talking about some subversive stuff or something that's just not appropriate. So they're not going to immediately let you go live or otherwise with stuff that they haven't had time to consider whether it fits in with their sort of profile of appropriate stuff. And so the way this works is you do put it on YouTube, but you put it up as private and you let the spiders that YouTube's algorithms use and Google search it out and consider that, okay, we don't see anything untoward in this. And then they're more likely when you finally present it after it's already had time to consider it, to let it go out to more people. And consistency is another high mark. They don't want to spend a lot of time promoting some, even if it's a great first show. It's kind of like newsletters for businesses. The CEO writes the president's corner or whatever, and everyone does a great job. And then 3 issues later it dies. That's sort of the kind of typical thing. So the same thing with videos on YouTube. They're a dime a dozen and they come and go. And once you demonstrate that, no, I'm a serious player and I'm going to continue to put this up, and there's some interest in the audience, even a few likes is enough to say, okay, well, maybe there's somewhere. And YouTube wants to make money. That's the whole basis of their business is eyeballs, however many eyeballs they can get onto something. And if it doesn't get them in trouble for being inappropriate, and if people are going to be consistent, then they will go beyond the sort of grassroots process that usually takes place. You just say, hey, watch my video or this, or, smash that button, and we'll push it out to more people. They also understand genre very well. So they'll know it's a real estate show or whatever. It captures that. And they'll try to put it in front of more people if they feel it's going to get them more eyeballs, which will, be beneficial to you, Doug, in this case, and also beneficial to them, YouTube, because they're going to make more bucks when they get more people looking at it. So that's one of a number of ways to do it. And I'm a pretty good judge of show. Quality is not the right word. That's my job, but relevance. And Doug and Ben have a good show. They really do. I didn't know what they were doing. I thought they were going to talk about interest rates for an hour every week. And I thought, it's going to die. But it's so much more than that. And yet the overarching theme of the show is the industry, real estate, mortgage. But, peppered in with a lot of current events. And when they do talk about, the impact on the public that's trying to buy a home or refi or whatever, it's relevant stuff and it's interesting, usually related to some policy that's coming up and, not just a boilerplate of kind of, frankly, boring stuff that you would go over and over. It's very relevant. So when you start talking about these things, folks, it's time to react to it. What's coming this spring, what's happened, et cetera. And they're both great on the air. So this is a show that's worth um, pushing however you can. Learn, Google it, Chat GPT, etc., to get it to start to catch fire. Invite other people on. As we haven't done this yet, Doug. Invite other people on in like industry, maybe a closing attorney, if that's the right name for them, and so on, who would then gladly say, "Hey, I'm on TV with Doug and Ben. I'm going to post this to all my pals and shoot it out across Facebook and through my website." And that can grow. And even if you don't quote monetize it, which is quite an achievement, 10,000 subscribers minimum, this, that, and the other, it should monetize itself by broadening your network and bringing in new clients and instilling some trust in people that, boy, they really take this industry and their industry seriously because they appear to be local experts on it, etc. So measuring a return on investment on these things might take on a very different look depending on what you're trying to achieve. And being diligent about consistency and putting it out and finding new ways to get people to watch it is critical. Don't give up before the miracle happens. And you just won't get a lot of views right out of the hatch. So if you have the best show in the world and you put it out once and you get 3 views, that's not a reason for disappointment. It means you got some work to do. And if it is a good show, people are going to want to watch it. And if you get it in front of them or allow YouTube to get it in front of them, they're going to see it and it's going to spread. Um, so that's my synopsis of that portion of the show. And with that, all these little tips, make it private at first. And I can send a million videos that I've watched that describe how do you get your stuff to start percolate on YouTube if it's valuable information. And in this particular case, what Doug and Ben put forth is indeed valuable to the community.
I was going to see if I could ask you a couple of questions about that. I've long thought that video is a missing piece of my business, but it just, quite frankly, I have a lot going on. It's really difficult to navigate. It's hard enough to just do what you do anyway, but add something that, you got to be consistent and take seriously. So some of the data that I've read and learned, I wanted to run that by you and see if you think it's accurate. Um, Everything I've always learned about YouTube is that you have to be extremely diligent and consistent, like what you said. 6 months probably isn't enough. You probably need to give it at least a year. I've always been told that you really need to be extraordinarily consistent when you post and when you make it available. So, as an example, YouTube is looking for you essentially to do it the same time, the same day, and the same time every week. There's a lot of data that I've seen that if you get past the 10-minute mark, the views and follows go up substantially and it pushes you, the algorithm pushes you. I'm not talking about shorts, obviously. I'm talking about more long form content. And is that accurate as to what you're seeing and what you're aware of? And the other thing that I read a couple weeks ago is that, um, SEO, search engine optimization, how quickly you pull up in Google and stuff like that, that is still important. But a lot of it now is going to GEO, which is, hey, you go into Chat GPT, who's the best real estate agent in
Mm.
McLaurin Farms or whatever, in Chapel Hill and Apex or whatever it is. And up until a couple weeks ago, one of the primary drivers of the responses for the LLM, the language learning models like Anthropic and Chat GPT and Grok and all that, one of the top ones was Reddit. And with respect to OpenAI and Chat GPT, now YouTube is the number one driver of responses that Chat GPT uses to answer those questions. So I know that's a lot. I don't expect you to know everything, but I'm just kind of curious if that stuff is in line with what you're seeing and what you're aware of.
Well, just as a little bit of an aside, Chat GPT, I simply pondered the other day because I use it a great deal. It's improving, it's getting more sort of natural feeling. That, okay, is there a sponsorship routine that might slant this? Like, what's the best, Yeti cooler to buy? And, maybe somehow there's a sponsorship or someone's paying. I haven't seen evidence of that yet. So is it reliable? Is it trustworthy? I don't know, but I agree. That is, I was a nothing AI last year, and a year later, I'm as dependent on that as I am on looking at my text messages to sort of as a clearinghouse for information. So I think in the future, that's enormously important. I think it's neat that YouTube is one of the primary focuses. And I do think at this point, AI is trying to do the best job it can, not with some sort of slanted sponsorship that's sort of underlying it or, sort of, angling their answers or views according to how it's being monetized. There could be some of that. And I think they probably deserve to do that in the future if it's honest.
Mm.
Um, but otherwise, you know, I think consistency, as you said, that's very important. And not only to the algorithm, but to people. They look forward to, an announcement that comes up and says at 10 o'clock, Brandon's going to be on talking about so and so. It's relaxing. By the way, I think YouTube closed captions everything now, so you don't really need to. But CapCut and some of those do a pretty cool job of animating the captions, and that's also an important thing. By the way, I'm sort of thinking out loud here, but because most people at work, they obviously can't afford to have their phone blaring or whatever, and they may
Right.
take time to watch your video if they can read the transcription, and so on. So, in terms of time, this is where content is king. You better hit them hard right out of the gate. Hey, listen, today we're going to be talking about this thing and really exciting. Stick with us, to find out the answer to that. And don't make it fake. Make sure it's interesting, or make sure it's informative. And give them a hook right out of the gate to keep them involved. A few things like that. Doug, to keep picking on them, Doug and Ben have a very concise short open, and that's critical. They don't want to see a 30-second open. You'll lose them, especially if they see the same one every week. So you make it enormously quick to come in, or many people, and this is a neat technique, you pop up Brandon first for the first 3 seconds. Hey, glad you joined us. Boy, we've got a big thing, a bunch of topics to discuss today. So let's kick it off. And then your little open comes in for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, cuts back to you. Okay, let's get started. Number one, XYZ. Now you got them hooked. So while I say that, consistency is important, well, obviously content is critical, because if it's just not informing people, or even if you have some great content, you don't present it in a way that assuages all of our insatiable impatience, then you may lose them. They were 10 seconds away from hearing something that would have been valuable to us, but you didn't order it properly. So we all need to be quick out of the gate, quick with the visuals. No one's impressed anymore with a cool open, because AI or whatever, everybody can have a, Hollywood level graphics flying around the screen. It's not
Right.
important. What you have to say is important. I don't know if I covered all of that, but,
Yeah, I mean,
and
you
the
get
other thing I would just summarize is we're again looking, how am I going to get these views up? Critical for you guys, and I guess every client, but specifically for high dollar deliverables like mortgages or homes, right? And your commissions there and their earnings, is how valuable are the faces you're getting out to. Just if anything, more of an impression. Gosh, these guys. First of all, I know Brandon and Doug and Ben take this seriously because they're spending time to educate us on this stuff, and that gives me a sense of trust and so on. They're not just trying to, get you to sign on the dotted line. And also, will these few clients in your case, which have high dollar marks, disseminate this? If you ask them, put it on your website, or I'd like to have you on as a guest, gives them enormous incentive to, spread the word about your podcast or whatever you call it. And your benefit, in other words, you can get 12 views, and those might turn into 2 closings in a few months. Not 10,000 or 100,000 or a million. But, I think it's business dependent. If you run an ice cream shop, I don't know that you might get some stuff, but I'm not sure anybody, because the, the dollar amount of the sale is $6.20. So I don't know if you'd see a return on investment or effort. Maybe it's not even investment. Don't forget money, time is the
Right.
biggest investment for all of you. And Brandon, you brought it up. My time's important. I'm busy serving my customers, and I got to get the laundry out. And this may not be a number one priority. Um, and again, forgive me because I'm sort of going off topic a little bit. But another thing I didn't mention about what I do is if I can't make it super simple for a client, they're not going to spend the time to do it.
Right.
If you got a whole bunch of stuff and it takes you even 15 minutes to get set up, that's too long. You should be able to, and I kind of have a feeling you're probably already there, Brandon, but flip it on and be able to deliver some content within 4 minutes. Get started. You might
Yeah.
do some preparation and so on, but it can't be complicated. So whenever I work with clients, I make sure they go and flip one switch, turn on the mic, turn on the thing, click on my link, and they're ready to go. And generally that happens. And then they'll be willing, okay, this isn't a huge deal. It's kind of like you don't want to call grandma because she'll keep you on the phone for an hour and a half. You love her, but you just can't devote the time because it's too complicated. So I'll talk to you later. Same thing here. If you say I'd like to sit down, but I don't have time because it's probably going to be 2 hours, and I just don't have it. And so my job is to make it ultra simple and turnkey for you, and make you more likely to say, I got 7 minutes and I got something to say. I think I'll sit down and do it.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that.
I will
Mhm.
say that it's been the hardest part was really just getting started for us. And I didn't do any of this to say, hey, you guys should all do a podcast. And I really did started the podcast to have something to have fun with, to mix it up a little bit. And also to get some content for social media, just because I know I need video out there, and I'm not big about just putting a camera in front of myself and talking to it. So this kind of forces me outside of my comfort zone and to do that. Also, I don't want to talk about real estate all the time, and that's one of my favorite things about the show. And it is funny that Steve, we had a conversation a couple weeks after we got it started. And he was like, "Yeah, like he said to you guys, I really didn't know what the hell you guys were going to talk about, like mortgage rates every week." And that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. And I think we've done a good job of that. It took me a while to kind of refine the rundown, but we use the same rundown every show. So we've got different like themes that we stick different topics into. But every time the theme is a similar conversation or we take it from a same viewpoint, it's just a different topic that we're talking about. And we always make sure to fit one or two real estate topics in, but that's it. I don't want it more than that at all. If possible, and just try to have fun, with the rest of it. Some of it's controversial stuff. I think you got to be careful about what you say, but at the same time, if you say anything in a polite way, I think you're fine. And I think we're doing a better job of that. I think we were a little more careful when we started, but frankly, it's like, look, it is what it is. And I want to have the conversation about what's actually happening instead of just doing it to do it. You know what I mean? So I've enjoyed it from that aspect. The show prep usually takes me between 15 and 30 minutes. Basically, I use Chat GPT. Brandon and I went back to Chat GTP for the last episode after our conversation about Grok and the pool and not really being a good fit for what I'm asking this thing to do. So it basically knows the rundown every week. I will feed it topics to go in certain spots that I think are good. And then if I don't have anything else, I'm like, suggest something for the other ones. And then I just massage it until we get it to the right point. And then that's it. I send the rundown. We both have the rundown right there with us. So we've got kind of our talking points to help guide the conversation, but we're definitely not reading a script or anything like that. It's just kind of
Mhm.
reminders to help, to move the conversation along throughout. And when we started, we wanted to time the segments, but we realized why. We don't have to fit into a certain box. So
Mm-mm.
some shows are longer, some shows are shorter. Some segments we'll spend 5 minutes on, because Ben likes to talk a lot. Some segments we'll spend 1 minute on because there's not as much to say about it. So I like the freedom and honestly, it's just fun. I've started really looking forward to doing it every week. It just breaks up the monotony of real estate work. And I think it's been, good for social media. It's definitely been huge on my TikTok. I mean, the posts on my TikTok, and that's what TikTok is for, but that's what that short video, the shorts, I mean, that's all that the whole world does right now is they just scroll and look at reels and shorts and stuff. So I think it's important to be in that space. Anyways,
Yeah, and by the way, it's rare that I do this after just bragging that I don't edit you guys. This last week, uh, Ben came back in on one thing, and there was a perfect out, and I thought we've worn that out, and I got rid of it, and we went on to the next topic. So sometimes, just in deference to the show and the people, I do that because I know what the audience how they're going to react. You know, if it's I perform my own little focus group when I'm editing, and say, okay, you know, are we going to lose him before the next segment? Oh, I tell you what, folks, this is Dr. Eric Berg. I'm going to just take his call for one quick second.
Go right ahead. When it's the dude that's making $500,000 a month on YouTube and other videos, you probably want to talk to that guy when he calls, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Good
think.
questions, Brandon.
What's that?
I said good questions. Thanks for asking those.
Yeah, I've
Hey,
wanted to do
big
video for a long
client.
time, but it's just difficult to fit it in. I think the thing that I struggle with is, you know, if I had started doing this 4 years ago, what would it look like now?
Well, I mean, right.
I would
Best time
probably
is
have to have a full-time assistant or two, right? But at the same time, like you still got a good thing going, right? Like at a
yeah.
certain point, just be happy. I don't know. It's kind of do I have the bandwidth to take on more if the video were to blow up? You know what I'm saying? So there's just a lot of things to take into account.
Well, another thing is, like he said, your setup doesn't have to be fancy or anything like that because of all the great tools we have now. I mean, so Ben and my setup is very different. Ben has the studio there at his office, and he literally sits in front of a television screen. Like Steve said, all I do is I bring a folding chair, put it at the end of my desk over here, and turn my monitor, and I sit in front of my bookshelves that's got a bunch of crap on it behind me. I mean,
That's good.
it's not that difficult. I mean, it helps show off my personality. There's a little bit of a wolf pack thing there or whatever. So I like that aspect of other podcasts that you see where just people have a bunch of stuff in the background that kind of shows off their personality. So that's what I decided to do. Ben wears a headset. I don't wear a headset. I do have a mic like Brandon does, but it's usually not on screen because I'm a little bit closer to the screen. So, it doesn't have to be perfect. Not everybody's has to look the same way. I think if it's something you're interested in using to maybe help grow your business, Brandon just made the best point possible. It's, what would it have looked like today if I'd started 4 years ago?
Even with the
Interesting.
little things that I do that a lot of people make fun of me, but my views even on Instagram went from like 4 to 500, and now I'm like 3, 4, and 5,000, which is a
That's
lot
good.
more calls than I could ever make in you know an hour or whatever,
Yeah.
or a year or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not always great, but I'm figuring it out a day at a time.
Well, and I can't tell you how many people that have come out of the woodwork that I hadn't talked to in years that have seen my social media in the, almost 12 years I've been in the business. And this is just taking that to the next generation, I think.
Yeah, I think that's crucial too. Like my kids' friends are like partying and like commenting, like "You're so funny," or "I love this house." I'm like, this is exactly why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and most of the biggest podcasters, I saw some statistics, Brandon, since you've sort of been looking at that category. The of the billions of views, there's 10 influencers that capture 80% of it. You know, and then below that, there's another segment, and then there's billions and billions that really don't. And they're at the top. They said, make sure this is something you want to do. You're doing it because you want to get the information out. Don't worry about the money. I mean, if you think this is going to be a profit center for you in terms of views and so on, you're probably not going to work with that focus. Just do it because you want to. You got a message to get out. You enjoy this, maybe communications with your stuff. But in terms of being a quote unquote successful podcast, get in line. But if that's not your motivation, then you're going to be a lot happier with the results. That means, as Doug mentioned, I'm starting to hear from people I hadn't heard from for a while. It's just a neat channel and pathway to communicate and set all those other expectations aside and have fun with it. So easy for those guys to say they're all making millions of dollars. The guy that was talking about it, but
Right.
anyway, I think it's probably pretty sound advice. He said when I started it, he was already I forget the guy's name, but had a national show, but he did his own little side thing, and it turned out that the tail started wagging the dog. And he said, but that wasn't my motivation at first, and apparently, my enthusiasm or whatever is showing through. And now, after the fact, this is a major part of my livelihood.
Steve, I have to hop off. I wanted to say thank you for taking
Thank
time.
you.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, well,
Guys, I put
and I'll
Steve's
just leave you
info
all with
in the
this.
chat. So
Yeah,
you
you
can,
bet. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I put Steve's info in the chat, his phone number, his email address, his website, if you want to reach out to him, if you need help with anything else or want to do something on your own, and just so you can check out and be in contact with him.
Yeah, and to that end, any of you that need a little help or tip or this, that, and the other, I'm not looking to start billing you guys. So I'm always here, to help you out with any questions you have. In terms of she just looks a little weird or something, I'm glad to get on the phone with you and give you some pro bono tips to make your already successful presence look better.
Steve, could you do me a favor and send that cheat sheet that you were talking about with like tips for helping with your visibility and stuff that I could share with everybody?
I sure will.
Okay. And then I can share your information again with them when I send that out too.
Sounds terrific. And I'll give you the kickback we talked about for every note you send out to all the other people.
Okay. That sounds great.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, Brandon, Christy? Y'all got anything else?
I'm good. This was great. Steve, thank you. I may reach out to you. I've got a bunch of stuff going on today, so it won't be today, but I appreciate your time and thanks for sharing everything with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Brandon and Christy. Great to meet you too. And I'm sure we'll see you around the campus.
Thank you, buddy. Well, I'll see you next week.
All right. Terrific.
Take
See you,
care,
folks.
everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.